I'm Toby. I'm CEO of Bookcall Design, and we're here again today to talk about some of the things that we're seeing in the ChatGPT apps, some of the things we've been learning about, thinking about. And again today we've got Ray and JC with me. I'll hand over to Ray to start with.
Hi, I'm Ray Deck. I'm the founder behind State Change AI, where we work on the hardest 5% of technical and business problems. And oh boy, do ChatGPT and MCP apps sort of fit in that category. So I'm really glad to get to be doing this investigation with you here today, Toby and JC.
Awesome. And I'll hand over to you, JC, to kick things off.
Right. Hey everyone. I'm JC, and along with Toby, we're working on Anchor design. So what we are focusing on right now is we keep learning about ChatGPT apps, what makes them great, what is the current state of things. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we're going to go deeper into another use case. Hope it's interesting. All right. So today we're looking at another ChatGPT app. In this case, it's Photoshop. I think this will be an interesting one. I'm doing a bit of a more detailed flow, and I will walk you through it, and then we'll see what breaks and what seems to be working really well. And if we take a step back, what we've seen in the previous episodes is we've looked at the current state of ChatGPT apps. What seem to be some of the categories that we're seeing are popping up, some of the principles. And if we take if we zoom out a bit, we have our creation apps, execution apps, and insight first apps. These are the main categories that we're seeing so far. And Photoshop, in this case, will fit according to, let's say, understanding and taxonomy, it will fit within the execution first app. And this is mainly because it respects three main principles. So we are starting with an existing asset, so not a blank idea. So we're not creating from scratch. And then actions are often not reversible. So that is something that we see with creation first apps. And then the success for the user experience here stands for correctness and not novelty of a new artifact. So, and the GPT layer, the interesting thing is that it really helps clarify the intent and shape the action that we are executing. So we'll see that in a minute. Right. So how we speak these things, this flow is in two parts. So as a professional user, let's put our design hat, all of us. I want to do something very specific. I have a specific goal, which is I want to edit an image so I can use it in my landing page, right? So let's say this is an image that I took from OpenAI documentation, and we want to have this in our landing page, but it's not quite there yet. Apart from it being a bit blurry, there are things that I might want to touch on, like the lighting or the background is a bit too flashy. I want to make the product, the app wireframe pop up a little bit. So let's dive into what I did and what happened in this flow. So first of all, if we follow our modes of work framework, I'm first in exploratory mode. So what I really want to do here is I want to get GPT's help analyzing this image and telling me what works and what doesn't work for it to be in my landing page hero section. So what GPT tells me here is it spars with me, and it tells me what it might be helpful to do. So like a quieter background or a soft shadow. So it all sounds really good. This is exactly what I'm looking for, right? This kind of help and sparring. So at this point, I'm ready, and I want to have ChatGPT, Adobe Photoshop, create something for me. I wanna execute on that idea. So basically, this is where things starts to get interesting for me, because Photoshop here, it really delivers what I was hoping for. So when I explicitly asked for creating something, right? So on this idea that we've been starting on, it right away produces a visual asset, an artifact that I can see. So in the beginning, it was a bit confusing just because I'm on my phone, and maybe the UI is a bit more restricted, but this is actually a carousel and I couldn't see this, right? So when I looked at this, I was like, okay, this is my current, so this is the same image. But then I actually saw here, there was a label saying current, and then I happened to slide over, and there were 6 more versions that Photoshop had like smartly produced for me. So there are a few glitches here in UX-wise, in my opinion, but all in all, I think it did a great job of having the baseline image, which is the one I gave it, and then additionally creating different versions that I could choose from. So there's even something that I haven't seen in other GPT apps, which is this detail view. In this case, it was interesting to me because it kind of stole the whole screen in the chat and just showed me the full view, which covered the my phone screen, right? So in here, I'm really focused on the specific action that I'm one level deeper. So
JC, can I just ask how? So first, understand how the flow that works. So you slid across for the different versions, and then how was the action? What was the action you did to bring up this sort of white balance scroll?
Right. So the only available action is in the console. It is to download or to adjust settings. So if you tap on adjust settings, or if you tap on the whole frame of the image, then this will pop up.
Okay, got it. That's cool. Really interesting.
Yeah. And another interesting thing here is the main CTA seems to be, so the end goal for the Photoshop app is to open the image in Photoshop, right? So what was interesting to me is that this main CTA is hidden within the detail view. So usually you see the main CTA exposed here in the main widget that the app exposes, right? But in this case, it wasn't until I got one level deeper that I saw the main CTA. So here the main CTA seems to be download or adjust, right? So this was an interesting interaction that I had with the widget. It seemed pretty rich. But if we go back to our goal, what we want to do is at this point, I wanted Photoshop to create different. Well, I actually wanted to create one asset. It defaulted to giving me different options. So at this point, again, we are following. It seems like it does follow our modes of work framework. So at this point, the next logical move is to constrain the app, right? So I have several options, and now what I want is to land on one, right? So I was trying to tell ChatGPT to basically reduce certain things like the highlights, or I was trying to be very detailed about what I wanted. So here, what I'm looking for is for the app to really constrain my options to one final version that I can sign off on. So, but first, what I wanted to do, it was also I wanted to understand what are the differences between them, and I really wanted to compare, right? So we follow our modes of work framework. So here I just ask a very specific question, which is compare the two best versions. So I'm trusting GPT in this case, and I think this is where GPT, along with a functioning app, is really strong. So here's where GPT really shines, because the app is basically in conversation or sparring mode again, and this is where the commitment will happen. So once I'm committed to it, I have a discussion with GPT, and then I basically I'm decided on version 8. Here, this is where I think the app is not currently in the best state. So my intention here is that, yeah, we are signing off on version 8, right? So let's log that in. Here, there is no UI happening or showing up. It's just, again, GPT confirming that it's logged. That's not really reassuring. I might have been expecting something like a UI that I can save or even that I can download. So it seems like something broke here, but again, as a user, I'm not sure what or what. So that is our first flow for the goal we had in mind, which is editing the existing image. Now, before we go to the second flow, which is just me trying to make things a bit more complicated for the app, is there anything for you guys that is interesting or worth singling out?
So, Mom, I'm asking, how long did it take you to go through steps 1 through 5 here? Was this slower or faster than it would have been to do a different way?
I think it was definitely faster than me opening up Photoshop. If it's like small edits, shadows or highlights, adjusting those small things, then it would have been faster for me to go to Photoshop, and because I know how to do it, right? But so in this case, this was slower. But if I had to do more first ideation, so I don't know what I want to do, and then I wanted Photoshop to execute for me without me actually touching any controls, then I do see how this could be way faster.
Okay. When you were using this, I mean, other than the defer thing being missing, kind of where you can pick up the UI, was there anything else where you felt like the UI would have helped with what you were trying to do? I mean, like, for example, highlighting parts of the image that you weren't sure about, or indicating, what sort of things you want to have rather than having in text. Were there pieces in this that would have been helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I think here, when I'm looking for a one-to-one, say, comparison, that's something that it tried to do here, right? But there were a few things that were confusing here, as we mentioned, but it is at this point that I'm actually asking for a comparison, right? So it is here where, apart from the justification of, okay, these are the two best versions, this is why, I would have loved to see the visuals here. So, for example, here it's, again, we know ChatGPT is really good at justifying everything. So in this case, everything works for me, so it makes sense. But here is where I might have hoped for that one-to-one comparison. So it's telling me A is this, B is this. So show it to me, show me why, right?
Interesting. Okay.
All right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take things one step further. So at that point, yeah, we are right. Like I've said, hey, let's log this version in. I'm happy with it. Nothing really signaled that there was a state change here happening. So I'm a bit unsure at the moment what is happening with my image. If I missed something, was there a step that I missed? But I wanted to continue. I'm trusting, in this case, the app, right? So my second goal was to maybe combine two images. So maybe add this one and merge it into the first one. So all I'm looking for here is to extract the icons or some of the icons and then like place them over or below the image. So again, here I'm also looking for recommendations from the app. So I just wanted to say, okay, so given this image and based on the locked in image that we have, can you suggest how we could merge them or how we could do a composition with it? And it did a really good job, again, all text based, right? So GPT stepping in and really justifying or explaining why and how this composition would look like. And then at that point, I was happy with it. So I gave it a go. So this is the thing, the interesting part of the whole flow. So here I'm signing off again. I'm saying, okay, and let's do this, what you suggested. And then it really, well, basically signaled to me that there was something missing, which I wasn't aware of. So it is telling me that the actual image that we signed off before, it's not present in the app, or there's no way for it to compose this because it's missing that piece. So at this point I was a bit confused, but I said, okay, maybe let me try to go back through our conversations and maybe there's something that I missed. So I went back to our console and I tried to look for a save or a CTA that would signal that is what is missing. So I went back here again. I tried to open in Photoshop, see if that did anything. It got stuck here. So this is where the experience really broke for me. So before I could sense something was off, but I couldn't tell exactly why. So at this point, I couldn't continue, right? There was nothing else I could do.
Yeah, sure.
So this is a very interesting part to me. And if we take a step back and look at our whole flow, worked and what broke for me in this experience is what really worked is that GPT alongside, as we've said before, the UI widget, that is where the app is at its strongest, right? So GPT is really good at justifying things that happen or display on the UI, and that really reassures the user. So making those two work in conjunction, that's really where the magic happens for me. And then I think for execution first apps, the important thing is that there's an early analysis. So often, what is my suspicion is that often users in these kind of apps will come with an idea or a draft, but not something they are clear on, right? Like if they are 100% sure about something, they will probably go to Photoshop and do it themselves, as we were saying. In this case, they're looking for some sparring, some exploration, and then locking something in and creating and executing on something. So what breaks is, I think these execution first apps, but I think this applies to any GPT app. The state continuity needs to be there. It's something that cannot we cannot throw as a user. I'm hoping that the app really takes the lead on that, and I'm not burdened with trying to guess what I missed or going back in the conversation, trying to understand what is missing here. So there's explicit state continuity that needs to happen and needs to be communicated to the user. So it needs to be communicated to the user both with the text from the chat, but also with that UI that explicitly signals that something has changed or something has been confirmed or handled, right? So I think hidden state is where the trust is broken. So at this point, that's where my trust was broken, right? Like I had done all this effort. I had spent quite a lot of time going through this and discussing with the app, but only to learn that I could not do anything basically at this point, right? And I didn't have any artifact or anything ready for me to use.
Yeah, JC,
Right.
as a UX expert, can we just like maybe zoom into the create part where things sort of where the wheels came off the wagon for you? And you know, I'm sure maybe even by the time we post this video, you know, our friends at Adobe will have, you know, fixed this app, right? So this isn't us staying in, you know, Photoshop. This is us trying to take some, you know, broader lessons about how UX works in this newer world. And sort of in that vein, what would you do? I mean, the fact that it forgot about it is obviously not a good thing. But what would you do to unhide, right, that state, to make that kind of thing clearer to a user? Like when you were going through this flow, what do you think would have helped? Other than what would have helped sort of maintain that trust as you went through the process?
Yeah, I think it is at this point that I was hoping for that trust to be really established. So all that happened before, I was okay with nothing really being signaling to me that we had a draft or something was saved. But at this point is where I'm making an explicit decision on, okay, let's log this one in. So here is where I think the app would be really strong, or would have been really strong if it showed to me just a very simple, even it's very simple widget with the final image.
Yeah.
Which seems to be available somewhere here. If it just showed it to me and said, okay, this is locked. You can download it, or we can continue, or whatever, it's available. But at that point is what I think I would have shown that commitment, that something was finally locked in and saved for me.
Yeah, sure. In fact, if we just look back, look at the flow of this for a second, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 you've got for your step one, you can sort of see how rich it is with the app interactivity, right? As in the early steps, and then you start to see less, like at the end of create sort of goes all text, and then constrain seems to be going to text, and then compare is all text, then defer is all text. It's kind of like it's front loading the visual part, and then allowing the chat to carry the ball, where I think what you're saying is you can talk to it through the chat, but the losing the visual feedback is causing you to lose more and more trust as you go through. And in fact, you were right to lose trust because it obviously sort of forgets about state at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting for me is that it feels like there's a piece missing in how ChatGPT is looking at some of these things. I mean, I guess some of these issues might be coming from how these apps are built. I mean, obviously, the way that these apps work is ChatGPT is handing over what it thinks is the right information to the app. The app then returns whatever it's processed and some UI if it's relevant, and that ChatGPT decides what to display. But it feels like if you think of this as like a conveyor belt or like a factory, where the context you're working on is going down the conveyor belt, and different apps are kind of looking at it in each turn. The problem is that sometimes ChatGPT is not letting them see what the actual important context is. Sometimes you would refer to an image and it hasn't given it to the app to look at, and so the app goes, "I haven't got that." It's almost like there needs to be a way to be able to say this context is important, and I'm keeping interest in it throughout this conversation and referencing it back, so that it's always be able to be picked up by the user at some point. So image A is always available for you to go, this is the important context I want to pull out now. I may have already mentioned it a few steps back, but this is what I'm actually talking about. And I think there's this kind of idea of flowing and switching between the sort of chat context, which is OpenAI's work, and handing it over to different MCPs delivering the apps. It's kind of where I've seen in other instances where all the information isn't necessarily going to the right place. And so the user goes, well, I'm stuck now because the app hasn't got all the things I wanted to have at this point to be able to do what I need to do. So it feels like there almost needs to be some sort of visualization of that sort of conveyor belt to say at each point, this is the context I'm talking about, or be able to give it some indication of it without having to make it really difficult, because it's a very visual thing, particularly doing things like images where text is not so helpful. So it feels to me like there's things, and certainly as we look at these different apps, there's processes in place that thinking about that flow of handoff between different apps that's a little bit janky at the moment, and it's not always easy to make sure the right information is going to the right place. So it'd be interesting to see how that develops over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
Oh, go ahead, Jason, please.
Sorry, I'm not seeing your faces, so just jump in. So I think one way that that could be really enforced, like that continuity, is through different checkpoints along the. So the same way we were saying, here is where I'm expecting there is a checkpoint, right, that I can sign off, and I'm establishing that trust. I think the fact that ChatGPT apps should rely and should rely on UIs or UI widget, that opens the door to a lot of different interactions that can help that continuity. So at this point, there should be one focus action for the user to take, which is, okay, I'm showing you different options, choose one. Right, I'm choosing one and then continuing my journey. So it should be really opinionated about there's a split in the paths of the user journey here. So let's have the user make a conscious decision. I'm picking this option B, and then there should be, okay, we're locking in option B, and there should be another visual or CTA, say, showing the user that they can do something with that asset. So I think the UI really opens the door to a lot of these interactions to help that continuity.
I mean, one thing just makes me think of is a sort of opportunity maybe for like a middleware library which sits over the top of MCPs to kind of make sure that the state is being handled by each of the individual, allowing the user to kind of go through all the states that have gone to the different MCPs if it needs to kind of pull them into a context, or at least help to kind of guide this. I mean, really, it's something that ChatGPT should to be built in, but there feels like there's opportunities to kind of help with this flow that isn't being, where it's still not completely sorted yet, maybe. Anyway, just some thoughts.
Yeah. Well, the question, like who should be, how much should ChatGPT be or the client, right? We can think of this in terms of the client and the server, right? The MCP server and then the ChatGPT client, or now that we have MCP apps, right? It's just the MCP client, right? Now Claude is in this game too, and Goose has been in this game for a while, et cetera. And what I think is happening here is we don't really have a great handshake between them, right? The problems here are in the seams. Hey, inside the MCP, well, that's kind of what they're doing, and they can do that well, right? Inside the ChatGPT knows how to do chats, right, and does that well. When the ball's getting handed off between the two of them, right, I think that's where things were always going to be problematic, right? Because the seams are always where the hard parts are. But I think that's really where we need to focus our attention. And the fact that, I think that when we're building like mobile apps or building most web apps, they're all like, they want to be an encased universe, right? And you're inside that app and you don't have that same kind of handoff challenge. So this, widget-oriented approach means we're going to see a lot more of these handoff challenges, and people who can figure that out and get good at it are going to have a lot of competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think there's also this kind of, I mean, I think the challenge, where I see the issue is, as you say, it's in the interface, right? It's when things are being handed off, but actually there's some important information which to do that decision, which might be earlier in the context, which hasn't been handed over. So there almost needs to be some sort of like request to say, actually, if you've got anything else, there's some other things I need in terms of that handoff process, because, and I think, as you say, this is something that's going to develop, but I think a lot of people are building these for one-shot things. And actually, I really feel like the power of this comes from having this conveyor belt where everything's kind of operating and being able to work, and that's where it's going to power more and more value from it. But obviously, at the moment, it's still not super slick sometimes, where making sure the information is going to the right place. So yeah, it's the seams where I think, and maybe that's something we should try and dig into a bit more. Look at that as some more ways of seeing how these things interact together. Like, how do you hand off from one app to another and how well that's done, because I think that's going to be where this stuff gets really valuable.
That's a really good point, Toby, because here what we're seeing is Photoshop, again, super early version, but in this Photoshop thing, is having a hard time handing off to itself, right, from one job to another. And then, what we're talking about is like, well, how do we get, like you say, the conveyor belt, or really a composition mental model for it, right? Which is, you wanted to use tool A for job X and tool B for job Y and you want to be able to smoothly go from one to the next. And the grease in the case is it's the ChatGPT or the AI flowing that through to create an overall experience that's really centered on the user. In order for us to fulfill that promise, we need to be able to handle those seams. And JC, I'm super grateful to you today for bringing this really cool case study of where the seams can be to and how important they are to our attention.
Really good. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. That was really awesome.
Thank you for listening, and see you on the next one.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
See y'all soon.
Thanks, guys.